trips alone. Call me when you need me, but you should know I'm never gonna let you be the one to go away.
Can it be? I wanna see you, and I'm in the way. Necessary. Can it be? What I wanna see,
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Problem Solver Politics live stream. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're actually going to dive right in. Nothing. Oh, I thought I heard you say something.
I did. I forgot to say in the mic first.
Oh, okay. Anyway, the Yang Gang was right. I don't think there is a more satisfying and disappointing feeling that you can feel at the same time as you know you were right about something, but that's the reason why you lost simultaneously. And I was screaming at the rooftops about media bias on the left against Andrew Yang back in the day. And now we've got MSNBC producers coming out and basically confirming it. Cody, show us the receipts. Show us the receipts.
Well, hold on. There's a couple things we need to kind of go through quickly. And first of all, I just want to say, like all things in life, there's a little bit more here than is easy to sum up. So, we'll get into that in a second. Anyway, here's the news, right? So, Andrew Yang had another episode of Yang Speaks. By the way, very hit or miss.
It's interesting.
There's some episodes, that, like every podcast, whatever, but some episodes that actually are really interesting. I recommend listening to it. I was disappointed. No flame to Dolph Ziggler. I was a little disappointed in the Dolph Ziggler episode. I was hoping for more out of that one. That's more what I mean.
Really? Interesting. Okay.
He's a wrestler. Anyway, today he had a former MSNBC producer. Some of you guys might actually maybe not recognize her name. Ariana Picari is her name. I probably pronounced that wrong. But she quit from MSNBC, resigned as a producer at MSNBC after about 7 years, I believe she said, back in August. She wrote an article on her own website called basically Why I Quit MSNBC. She's one of the few journalists in the past, few months. What was it? Was it Barry Weiss? Who was it? Was the opinion editor of New York Times? Something similar. Just journalists resigning from their paper, basically being like, here we go. Why I'm leaving MSNBC, she wrote this. We'll go through. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you might remember reading that. Anyway, Yang had her on the show. Andrew Yang was then promoting the show on Twitter, saying, hey guys, tomorrow we're airing this episode where I'm interviewing a former producer here, Ariana, right? So this went out.
Yep.
Scott Santons, which she did, I will say she did flame Scott. She did kind of, she got Scott back a little bit. Anyway, he dropped the link to the Yang Media Blackout. We'll look at that. And she put this something really interesting. She said, actually, I just reviewed my journal. On 4/25/19, I was told that we were never to pursue Andrew for an interview on our show, along with several others. The list of candidates was dictated, but the reasons for allowing them or not were not explained, which is really interesting, especially specifically on MSNBC. To get more specific, she says on our show, right, she was at the time doing Lawrence O'Donnell's show on MSNBC, which is specific, and there's a reason why I'm being very specific on that was the show she was producing.
But Cody, while you're talking about this, I just
really
realized...
quickly, one thing. I want to get to the last couple things, and we'll get into that.
Okay.
Because there's two things I want to touch on. So anyway, I went back and I looked a little bit. Speaking of, I followed the link from Scott Santons to the Yang Media Blackout he did. And I wanted to look, did anything show up on April 20, what was it, April 20, oh man, my maths, April 25th, 2019, right? We looked at this. So anyway, April 25th, 2019, and you will notice something. Something did get posted April 25th, 2019, and it was MSNBC reposting a graphic from a few days prior, but posting a graphic that was originally aired on Morning Joe that featured, it featured damn near everyone. You got a Hickenlooper, bigger name, but a separate graphic was posted that once again omitted them. I actually missed it the first time. But this one, they actually went back and added Swalwell, Moulton, and a few others and left off Andrew Yang. This was on April 25th, 2019. The very day this woman proposed to in her notes, have had it written down. But there's just one last thing. We'll get further into it. April 28th, another MSNBC thing comes up here from Weekends with Alex Witt. However, this was during an interview with Andrew Yang. So while Lawrence O'Donnell was told by producers to, under no circumstances, have Andrew Yang on. The network didn't seem to apply that across the board. Yeah. I'll pull the interview up. You guys can see it right now. He did do an interview on MSNBC. You can see right here. This is the show's Weekends with Alex Witt. And I'll actually run it quickly for 1 second, and you can see when they do, Scott Santons mentioned in the article, they do run this in front of him. And indeed, it's got everyone, even Tulsi Gabbard, which, we'll say what you want. Ooh, they got an Ugly Jay Inslee picture on there. Yeah. They got Seth Moulton. They got everyone left.
I forgot about Seth Moulton.
How funny is that? It's like
Swalwell.
no one realized when they ran this graphic that he's not on it. We're interviewing this guy for president, and he's not on the president graphic. Like, it's because they didn't care, obviously. But I just wanted to point that one thing out. Sorry, back to you. I just want to point out that, yes, we can see that MSNBC was screwing around with Yang, playing with his name around that time. However, while this producer did confirm that he was not to be on the show she was producer for, Lawrence O'Donnell, it does appear, and no offense to Alex Witt, I do believe that's kind of more of like a bench kind of B tier show, and Lawrence O'Donnell's kind of one of the more bigger flagship shows, right? As far as I understand MSNBC programming, am I right?
Yeah. Well,
He's
one of
more
the bigger names.
He's more prime
I
time.
think the flagship show is Rachel Maddow.
Not the. I mean, he's more prime time is what I meant, right?
Okay,
He's like
yeah.
in the prime time lineup, I believe. I think this is more of an earlier show. It's the weekend show, for reference, right? But that was it. It's just that Yang. Not saying that it's proof that Yang was to never be in interviews ever on the network. However, it definitely seems like the bigger, more serious political shows were being told not to have him on. Yeah. So, sorry, you were saying.
Well, I was just gonna say if that text, literally, she said 425:19. Oh, 425:20, right?
19.
Or 425:19 is when she was told, that he was on a list of people not to pursue. Bummer that wasn't 425:20, right? Or else that actually would have triggered an FEC violation. Because if you've got an FCC...
Remember, there is no FEC.
Well, there's no director of the FEC, but there's still all the bureaucrats that have to answer the phone.
They can't call a quorum or do anything.
Okay.
I looked at it. We did a video on this. It remains true. Like, literally, if you commit campaign finance violations, you cannot actually be brought in front of a quorum to be tried for it yet. Because the FEC has to get people together. Hey, dude, backlogging of... I wonder how many campaign finance violations get backlogged when you can't do it. Sorry, but...
Yeah. So, can I finish my thought? So, all I was saying is, bummer it wasn't 425:20. And I would like to know what the rules are for this more. Because you remember, Cody, back in our radio days, oh my gosh, I had a candidate on for city council once on like day 89 of the 90-day window before an election day. And we ended up having to send out invites to every single one of the 12 contenders for that spot, because it's actually an FCC rule that if it's within 30 days of an election, you have to have at least offered equal airtime to all the other candidates that are contending for a spot. So if it's,
Also, though, I believe that'd be network wide, correct?
Yeah, but still, I mean...
So again, like, the idea of, like, let him go on the weekend show with Alex Witt. He's not going on Lawrence O'Donnell.
Yeah, exactly.
That would make...
There's ways you could always cheat to make sure the big contenders are on prime time, but still, at least that would be a mechanism for launching a formal inquiry.
But still, Yang was literally on the network the next day or 2 days later. It's just, it was on a weekend instead of during the week. I mean, I just wanted to point that out. But also, I thought it was interesting. Something else you'll notice. Again, Scott Santos put this together. I was retweeting and there for most of these things being cataloged. I'm sure there's other things, but it is interesting if you do look around that time. Andrew Yang was being slighted, basically. Dude, this one was pretty funny. This one they put, again, same graphic, just so many faces, no Andrew Yang, right? But you'll notice there was a pattern for a while. Early on, the spring and, maybe early summer of 2019, MSNBC was basically just... Yang, they leave Yang.
Look, there was Bill de Blasio on there. Like, I'm sorry, there is something wrong with the channel.
People. They were adding people. It's like people that weren't on one of the next one. They kept omitting them.
But what was the antipathy? Was it racism? Was it because he was Asian?
Well, no. What she brought up in the interview, and I guess I'll see it play a little bit because it was pretty cool. Actually, one thing that happened is Andrew Yang actually did an Instagram live later that day, and I'll actually post a link to it in chat. Somebody very Washington Heights, shout out to this user, very kindly went ahead and grabbed this off Instagram so you can watch it on YouTube. And it was really interesting because in the actual podcast Andrew Yang did with her, she hadn't brought up this information yet that she in her journal had a do not interview Andrew Yang note meeting.
Yeah.
And so during the actual podcast, they didn't really get into it very much. So actually, Andrew Yang had her back on later for a Instagram live. And in the Instagram Live, they kind of expounded on it. So I'm going to play this for a little bit. She'll explain it. We kind of went over this a little bit already, but I just kind of want to play the clip so you guys can see a little bit of it yourself.
Yeah, let's hit it.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, I just got to
Roll tape.
I just got to.
See, you were too young to remember those days. Roll tape. Those were good days, Cody.
There was a list of candidates that we weren't meant to seek out interviews with, and you were one of them. And I'd have to say, I think I and many people who supported me kind of sensed that, but I didn't want to put you on the spot when we were talking on the podcast because, frankly, I didn't want to seem like I just had an axe to grind. Like I'm more interested in trying to figure out what the structural incentives and problems are than anything that had to do with my campaign. But first, let me say thank you so much for reviewing your notes and unearthing that piece of information. It did mean a lot to me and people who supported me.
Of course. Now it's frustrating because there were things every day that I was watching happen that didn't seem right to me. And so in one way, them telling us, who they want to go after and who they don't want to go after, it was just kind of just another normal day, sadly. But I saw something, after you tweeted, we were doing an interview today, someone said something about reference the primaries, and it reminded me of that conversation that we'd had. So I wasn't sure. I'm still all boxed up, from my move to Virginia, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to find my notes, but I did, and there was a list of candidates, and next to your name, said never to pursue you. And
shockingly, I never
rough.
did actually go on that show.
No, and I vaguely remember there was a time when I think you were planning to come on, or something happened and it fell through. And I honestly can't remember what happened or when that happened. But
well, you worked on Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, which was one of the top shows on the channel. So my team was always trying to get me on. I think there was a point when I was supposed to go on, and then something fell through that you're describing. I don't remember if there was anything on one side or the other, but I do remember some of those interactions just secondhand.
Now, it's I'm going to play more in a second and go a little bit further. She goes on to explain a little bit more of it. I just wanted to, again, kind of highlight that because it is one of the kind of technicalities, I guess, kind of ticky-tack angles of it. But yeah, and I guess it kind of does reveal a bit of how they do it. She only produced for one show, but they'll keep you off, that's when she said never to pursue him, and he never went on the show. And he even said, yeah, we tried. He went on the network.
Well, you said something interesting in a conversation we had on another podcast another day where you said it's weird where it's like they used to just want your money, now they want your mind. When if it were just about money, Andrew Yang would have been in the top 5 of 60% of these graphics because the Yang gang was sacrificing like crazy and he was getting donations left and right and was pulling more money, more donations, putting more points up on the scoreboard monetarily than, over half of the board there. And was making all of the donation limits. You remember back in the day, they used to put more limits on how many individual donations you had to get and how much money you had to raise and how many, basically views you had to get on YouTube, for lack of a better term, before you were monetized. So it just shows that the bias wasn't monetary. I mean, he was getting...
Well, she explains it right here, actually.
Yeah, he had 6 or 7 million on hand when he was getting censored by these people.
Early
censored through omission.
I believe spring of 2019, he was still pretty small and still kind of built. I'm not surprised that he was left off just for how small he was. It was just interesting that it was deliberate. It wasn't just nobody said we're not having Vermin Supreme on. I'm assuming that was kind of understood. You know what I mean? Yeah. Interesting. So we'll keep going. But yeah, it literally just do not ever pursue this individual. And then I think interesting. Yang confirms that he was indeed never pursued for that show and tried to get on it himself. So I believe this next little bit here, I hope it's longer Instagram Live, but the first half they kind of talk about it. She explains a little bit of the reasoning behind it. Okay. Let's listen for yourself. She explains it being less nefarious. I honestly believe it that way as well, but here we go.
And I, the big question that comes up is why, and what was behind that decision. And I, at the time that day, they didn't go through, one by one and say, we want this person for that reason, or we want this person for that reason, or we don't want that person for X, Y, or Z. If I have to reflect on, their position in general, it's that they wanted candidates who evoke some sense of intrigue, and not that you didn't, but they are trying. There were times when Beto O'Rourke was, kind of someone who they, really wanted to get on the show, and there were times when he really wasn't, and it kind of like, there
Freaking Beto.
there wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason there, but I can
Beta.
tell you that, a lot of the discussion wasn't about policy and what's, let's dive into this person's, policies. They might say that that's what they wanted to do, but that almost never happened. And in the editorial meetings, that also was not something that came up. Like, I don't remember hearing a discussion about universal basic income.
By the way, ouch, another big L right there. They weren't even talking about UBI as like a possible segment, even just a UBI socialism segment. Like
And
any
they're
kind of
supposedly
segment,
the
like
most.
nothing.
They're supposedly the most progressive channel too, which is one of the most nefarious. Like, I don't give these people an inch, bro. They are filthy grifters over at MSNBC.
Well, also think about this though. Think about this: when you are a head of a network, right? You have these cogs in the machine, like a producer. She's one of them, right? It's like, again, she was taking notes on what she was told to do. I mean, you get top-down orders is all I mean, right? Dude, if you run a network, I bring up this comparison a lot. It's like, mafia movies, they argue about the no-show jobs you can give out.
Yeah.
Because you only have so many hours. There's
Yeah.
only so many hours of primetime TV you have per day. And you get to give that to people. Well, you think they just forget? They just go home? Well, whatever. They're
Yeah.
lucky to have me on MSNBC. You think that's what people feel? They were lucky I was on their show. Maybe some. But they understand that they have to use this. We give Andrew Yang airtime even if it gets us views. So what? For what? What is he going to do for us later?
Yeah.
Now, ironically enough, he gets CNN views as the contributor
Yeah.
they pay now. So, again, there's nothing to say that these people telling, producers at MSNBC, and again, MSNBC in particular was the worst at this. They really were.
They're just a bunch of drunk Gen
But
Xers.
my point is,
raised by supposed liberals.
yeah, but it almost feels like MSNBC was just ran terribly. Like I'm not a fan of CNN. I think they have a lot of bad programming. They could see Yang was money. He was ratings. He's smart. He's well spoken. He does well in front of a camera. Like, they could see that. Why was MSNBC? And again, she was talking. It's like, it wasn't necessarily like debating the policy of these people. What was the BS word they were giving her? I'm assuming she's quoting intrigue. Invokes in like Beto, I guess, brought up.
Oh yeah,
intrigue.
Beto O'Rourke
That feels
invokes
like-
intrigue.
That feels
Yeah,
like the
dude.
BS you give the cog. That's the BS you put the people below you when they ask, like, why are we doing Beto? He invokes intrigue. Like, what's it even
Yeah.
mean? How do you even argue that? Like, I guess, like, what is it? He's on our show, right? But I'm just saying, I don't know if I don't know, maybe they're more nefarious. I just definitely think there is these prime time, like, what this shows me is that there is definitely some obvious but manipulation. The networks understand if you go on Weekends with Alex Witt and MSNBC, we could say we had you on MSNBC, but they know. They literally tell the Lawrence O'Donnell producer 2 or 3 days before he goes on out the Alex Witt show, the B-string show, hey, you are never to pursue this man. Never. Why would they tell it to one producer and another show have him on?
Yeah.
It's because there is serious discretion there. They don't
Yeah,
just look
but
at it as the network. They know what they're doing, obviously. It's the network.
MSNBC, my friend, is analogous 100% to America. Okay? MSNBC is the stupid millennial raised by drunk Gen Xers still living in his parents' basement. I mean, even the name MSNBC, they're literally in the basement of NBC, all right? And it's all just a bunch of spoiled by their wealth boomers who raised a bunch of cynical, drunk, and useless Gen Xers who have now completely given up on any kind of morality or just adopted pure godlessness in their life. And that's what you get. Channels like MSNBC.
Yeah, I mean, we're literally talking about programming decisions. I don't know if it's that deep. I just think they were programming incorrectly. Because
No, but don't call yourselves
remember,
news. This is why fake news scorched earth the
But dude,
media,
okay.
and that phrase worked.
Hold on, I just want to get into something else. Because I want to look at this now. Now that we know this was actually going on, and we kind of did, but someone's saying, dude, that was pretty crazy. I want to go back and run that clip for you guys again. She literally said, like, do not pursue him ever. And then he confirmed, I never actually went on the show despite pursuing you. I mean, like, that's pretty. It isn't like Andrew Yang was so insignificant. It was just like, Yang, who cares? What, we don't even know about him. It was, do not pursue this man. You cannot have him. Other shows, we'll have him on other shows, and we'll do BS disrespect him. Anyway, we brought up the other network, CNN, but check this out. I'm sure some of you guys remember, a lot of you guys probably remember this, but I want to run this again. Andrew Yang finally got so fed up with what was going on with MSNBC.
Yeah, this was his greatest day of the second half of his
23rd.
campaign.
November 23rd, 2019. Andrew Yang actually came out and he said this on CNN with Anna.
You are with us tonight, but I'd be remiss if I did not mention you were also invited on MSNBC this weekend, and you turned down that invitation and instead took to Twitter to slam the network, a decision that could be seen as risky during a Democratic primary. We're showing one of those tweets here, which reads in part, was asked to appear on MSNBC this weekend and told them that I'd be happy to after they apologize on air. What exactly do you want an apology for?
Well, Anna, Americans tuned in to the debate earlier this week, and they saw that I got called on less than any other candidate, including candidates that I'm polling higher than. And the questions I did get had virtually nothing to do with the core ideas of my campaign. And if this were an isolated incident, that would be one thing. But if you go back over the last number of months, MSNBC has literally omitted me from over a dozen fundraising and polling graphics, which it's not about me. It's about the 300,000 plus Americans who've donated to and support my campaign, and the millions of Americans who know we need to rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us. Think about those people donating $10, $20 of their hard-earned money to put a candidate on the stage and then have MSNBC virtually ignore me for 32 minutes, or when they tune into MSNBC to see how we're doing in the polls, it's like I don't exist. And you can go through the records. You can see they've done it to me over and over again. And I'm not the kind of guy who takes offense easily. But at this point, you have to call it like you see it.
Interesting. And again, I mean, I'm sure CNN loves to have somebody. Did you catch what she said there? She said, you chose not to go on MSNBC and instead like basically badmouthing. I'm paraphrasing there a bit, right? But then she said, some people would say it's a very dangerous thing to do in a Democratic presidential. Like, they know how powerful these media networks are. Like, whoa, spurning MSNBC during an election. Bold move.
Well, and I think
why is it a bold move? Is it the only news network? I'm literally on CNN right now. Why would it be a bold move to spurn one of these news networks if there's plenty of them and they all talk about the news, right? Thought that was interesting. She kind of, I mean, it's also she's a journalist.
Well, I think that was his best moment. I don't know if you remember this, but I said, I will never have gotten behind Andrew Yang more in my life than if he literally carries the torch of media bias. I mean, the greatest thing Donald Trump ever did for this country was break the media and challenge the media and basically go after and be the only check and balance on the fourth branch of government that we have in this country. And Yang was actually going to be right there by his side. My biggest disappointment in Yang was actually when he capitulated and went back on MSNBC without ever having taken that apology. I think he would have gotten so much more clout with the American people, more donations from donors, and more screen time on other networks that would ultimately dwarf MSNBC had he stuck to his guns and decided he shouldn't go back on MSNBC. But then again, that's armchair quarterbacking the day after. Don't want to engage in that.
Like, dude, there's some fights you're just never going to win. There's some fights you have to take, you just can't win. You got to back down. Anyway, he was talking about something in particular. This didn't come out of nowhere. MSNBC, we had pointed out, been kind of screwing him for a while, right? But check this out. Daily Caller, of course, wrote this. But this was that debate he was speaking of right here. One Democrat waited 32 minutes before his first question. Moderators didn't ask businessman Andrew Yang a single question until 32 minutes into the fifth Democratic presidential debate. The debate featured 10 Democrats debating in Atlanta. I definitely remember the Atlanta debate. Yada, yada. They go through. A lot of us remember this. They have the pictures here. I believe they have some of the pictures here. Here we go. You can see some of the New York Times. Can I do this? Dang it. I'm going to format differently. Sorry about that, guys. But you can see, I mean, Andrew Yang was not getting very much speaking time.
Dude, it was brutal, man.
At that debate. And again, it's what spurred him to eventually come out and say he was going to boycott the network MSNBC. But again, I want to go back and I'll try to cue the video up. I might have to listen to the video again. But again, I think it's interesting. If we go back to what, this woman said, this former producer for MSNBC, right? And she says she was told to never pursue Andrew Yang for an interview, right? I just wonder, what do you think? And long history of him being screwed on graphics, right? So I just wonder what she was being told as well about, or not even her, but I wonder what the producers for the debate were being told as well. So I mean, that's really the big stuff. A little bit longer than I thought on this, but I just want to get to some of the context. We can kind of just talk about some of the greater context, the greater implications. But the context here is very interesting. Someone who did work at MSNBC today did come out and confirm, indeed, that Andrew Yang was somebody that was told for at least the show she ran with Lawrence O'Donnell to not be on the network, to not have on the show. And it was interesting. A few days later, he showed up on one of the lesser prominent shows on the network. All very interesting stuff. So that's the newsy angle of it. That's actually what happened. That's the new stuff.
Yeah, man. I